President, I would ask consent to speak as if in morning business.
Without objection.
Mr. President, this past Sunday was the 43rd anniversary of the enactment of the Clean Water Act. In 1972, the Clean Water Act amended the Federal Water Pollution Control Act, which was the first major U.S. law to address water pollution. Mr. President, this law was enacted with bipartisan support. I should really say nonpartisan issue, because the Congress in 1972 and the administration recognized that clean water was in our national interest, that was important to our public health, it was important to our environment, it was important to our economy. This law established a basic structure for regulating pollutant discharges into the waters of the United States, and it has been the cornerstone of our efforts to protect our nation's waterways. Several times we have done cost analysis of the cost of regulation versus the benefit of clean water. And it's overwhelmingly on the side of the benefit to our community in better health, in better environment, a better economy. On this occasion, I would like to speak about the recent efforts to protect America's waterways, such as the EPA's final Clean Water Rule, and why we should defend these efforts and allow for nationwide implementation. In May, the EPA released their final Clean Water Rule, which completed another chapter in the Clean Water Act's history. As the Clean Water Act worked to restore the health of our nation's water resources, we saw the U.S. economy grow, demonstrating that America doesn't have to choose between environment and robust economy. A clean environment helps build a robust economy. Two Supreme Court decisions, however, called on the EPA and the Army Corps to clarify the definitions of the waters of the U.S. The EPA's final rule restores some long overdue regulatory certainty to the Clean Water Act. I might tell you, in reviewing this rule, it basically reestablishes the long-standing understanding of what were the waters of the U.S. and what was subject to regulation. This rule allows the Clean Water Act to continue its important function of restoring the health of our nation's waters. The rule became effective this August, but immediately following the implementation and on this anniversary, there have been unprecedented attacks on the final rule. As the rule came out, a federal district court in North Dakota granted a preliminary injunction blocking its implementation. The EPA continued to implement the rule in all states but the 13 states that filed the suit that led to the injunction. However, in October, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit decided to stay implementation of clean water for the entire country. This attempt to overturn the Clean Water Rule is dangerous, short-sighted, and a step away from good governance, public health, and common sense environmental protection. Let me tell you what's at risk. What's at risk is that in our nation's streams, miles, and 200 million acres of wetland, over half of our streams and over 200 million acres of wetland are now at risk of not being under regulation under the Clean Water Act. These protections are needed for drinking supplies of 1 out of every 3 Americans. I am very concerned about the impact on all states, but let me just talk a moment, if I might, about my own state of Maryland. Marylanders rely upon our water as part of our life. We live on the water. 70% of Marylanders live in the coastal areas. We depend upon clean water. We are particularly concerned about our drinking supply of water as well as the health of the Chesapeake Bay. We are at risk with the waters of the U.S. confusions out there by the Supreme Court decisions and now the stay of this rule by the administration. The Clean Water Act and EPA's final rules are essential to the health of the Chesapeake Bay. Wetlands protections are especially critical to the Chesapeake Bay because the wetlands soak up harmful nutrient pollution. This past Monday, I was in Howard County at a NOAA announcement of the BWET, Chesapeake Bay BWET grants. These are Bay watershed education and training funds. These are small dollars that go to institutions to help educate our children. In this case, the Howard County Conservancy received a grant because they bring all the students from the Howard County Public Schools to an outdoor experience to rate and judge the streams in our community. The streams, of course, flow into the Chesapeake Bay, and they're giving us a report card. And I must tell you, that report card isn't going to be as good as it should be. And without the protections in the Clean Water Act, it's going to be more difficult to meet the goals we need to in order to protect the Chesapeake Bay and all the watersheds in this country for future generations. The health of the bay is closely linked to upstream water quality and the restoration and protection of headwaters. It should go without saying that these waters are located in states beyond Maryland's borders. Improvement to upstream water quality is positively correlated with the water quality of the bay. We need a national program. That's what the Clean Water Act is. It's a national commitment because we know that the watersheds go beyond state borders. In Maryland, we set up the Chesapeake Bay Partnership. Yes, Virginia and Maryland are working together, but we also have the cooperation of Pennsylvania, of New York, of West Virginia. Why? Because these states, Delaware, because these states contribute to the water supplies going into the Chesapeake Bay. We need to protect these waters. Protecting of America's waters are critically important to the public health. So what's at stake here? What's at stake if we derail the Clean Water Rule? The public health for the people of Maryland and all states around in this country, public health, environment, and economy of my state and the states of my colleagues have become seriously at risk from this decision to hinder this essential common sense guidance. I hope the court moves swiftly to affirm the rule in its final decision and restores the invaluable protections needed for the drinking supplies of 1 out of every 3 Americans. As we recognize the anniversary of the Clean Water Act, I want us to continue to defend this nation's waters from pollution. This act ensures that every citizen receives the clean water they need and deserve. The EPA's final Clean Water Rule provides further regulatory clarity that we need to ensure the health of our water resources. I urge my colleagues to continue to defend and fight for the clean water as we recognize the 43rd anniversary of the Clean Water Act. Mr. President, every Congress should, as its legacy, add to the protections that we provide for clean water in this country. That should be the legacy of every Congress. But we certainly don't want to hinder that record. And therefore, we need to implement the EPA's Clean Water Rule nationwide, and I urge my colleagues to support such action. With that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor.